Okay, it's been kind of long awaited. We've been trying to connect here for a while. We actually were trying to connect to have him come down to our studio, and then life kind of got in the way. But weirdly, life took us to a home studio, and life took us to stay at home orders here. And it actually made it easier to make this happen. So, this is an episode of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and join me for this one is former Pittsburgh Steeler, former West Virginia Mountaineer, a fellow Mountaineer here actually, Mike
So,
Logan. So, Mike, first off, thanks for joining me. I know that this is a crazy time for all of us, and you're a busy man, so we definitely appreciate it. And I know the fans here of multiple platforms here with the Now Network will be happy to hear you and see you.
well, it's good to be seen. These are trying times, man. But it's been a gift and a curse for me. Actually, being confined to your house kind of contains me, and I can really prioritize and get some things done. So I'm glad to be at the table,
Yeah.
finally knocking out this interview. But it also may get interrupted if I have them two young toddlers come. But I'm like, they took over our office downstairs. They made that into kind of like a playroom and schoolroom for the home.
Okay.
So I'm actually camped out in my bedroom at my wife's vanity, sitting here set up a little shop. So hopefully all goes well.
Awesome. Well, you know what? If they get in the middle there, maybe we'll go viral. So that seems to actually be popular. So that's not a bad thing.
Believe me, them Logan boys, they're going to be doing something on the internet pretty soon, man. Because there are some
Okay.
characters. It's been an enjoyable time just to fellowship with my wife and my two younger sons, being at home, confined together, and really just finding out what the real purpose of being family is. And
Right.
it's been joyous for us, even though we're confined to the house.
Yeah, that's awesome. And same here. My girlfriend and I actually recently moved in together before all of this, so we got through the holiday season and then this. So this kind of immerses ourselves and, and forces us to get along. My mom keeps asking me, "You guys okay?" Because this is a lot, like right away. But no, we're good. It's just I will say she's doing some stress baking. So either I'm going to come out of this 50 pounds bigger, or I don't know, maybe I'll come out of it actually in more shape. Because in order to free my mind working from home all day, I go on more walks and runs than on a regular basis.
I'm telling you, I'm going to come out of this at D lineman weight because I'm eating good. I mean, we're cooking every day. We've been cooking 3 meals a day for the kids, my wife. We all kind of got different tastes. So my wife has been at the stove basically all day, and I'm
Okay.
chiming in, helping her cook some things. But we've been eating good. So that 205-pound corner that people seen at West Virginia, and they thought I was big then. When I come out of this, boy, I'm pushing D-line weight.
Okay. Yeah. Well, at WVU, I don't know. The Rusket Musket, I don't know. I think that was there when. Yeah, that's no longer there. Amazingly, unfortunately, though, we had to pour one out for the Rusket Musket. But you eat enough of those sandwiches at 4 a.m. That's definitely going to bulk anybody up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leaving college was one of the toughest pills to swallow. There's nowhere in Pittsburgh outside of fast food to be able to eat and have it delivered to you at 4 or 5 in the morning. But in Morgantown, they'll show up at your front door at like 6 a.m.
Right.
So that was amazing, and too bad that's not going on anymore. But all right, Mike. I know that you're out of the league a bit, and you're a family man now, so that's your number one priority. But you play in the league, you won a Super Bowl. Fans know you from WVU. They know you from the Steelers. You also played with the Jaguars, but we don't have to mention that as often for this. So you certainly know the game. And we did have some fans chime in here and some colleagues with some questions. But I also myself wanted to, just ask you. I'm assuming you're still keeping some tabs on the Mountaineer program. You're wearing the WVU hat there a little bit. So first off, taking it from the West Virginia perspective, because we got the gear on, both of us here. Neal Brown's going into his second year as head coach. And for me, last year, I got some flack for this, but I kind of opened up the season with shows saying temper your expectations. It's his first year on the job. It's a new system. Everything is kind of new. You almost have to just give them a mulligan on last year. You can't expect much, and they didn't make a bowl game, so it was kind of disappointing. You go into this year, though, now a little bit more pressure. Fans aren't just going to, let him just keep on losing. You're going to eventually have to turn it on. But number one, what do you take from Neal Brown so far, from what you know, if you have any friends who've been around him and have been down there? And what do you expect out of the program moving forward? Because now second, third, fourth year under Neal Brown, and he's going to be given time. Now you're going to start having some fans want to see things turned around.
First, I'll address what my thoughts were about Neal Brown, just from hearing things, knowing certain things on the inside. I actually had one of my former players down at West Virginia that I coached up here at University Prep in the Hill District in Pittsburgh. Okay. And Kenny Robinson was, first team All Big 12 safety who played for West Virginia. Didn't get an opportunity to play for Neal Brown, but he got to be introduced and find out the way that Neal Brown is trying to put his stamp on the program. And unfortunately for Kenny, that came with an unfortunate situation of him not being able to, enter in the transfer portal and not being able to continue playing at West Virginia University. And I had some long conversations with Kenny about what was going on, what the coach, what the coach's input was on that decision that he made. And he let me know from the gate that Neal was a no-nonsense guy who was really trying to establish something great at West Virginia University. And I think Kenny knew that he was with a no-nonsense coach. And with all that all that going on along coupled with some other personal family things that Kenny had, he unfortunately withdrew from West Virginia and ended up playing in the XFL. But he let me know what Neal Brown was about.
Okay.
And me being a high school football coach now, I loved it. I loved the attitude that he brought in. I loved the mentality that he brought in. And then I think we should extend him some grace in that last season because he lost a lot of talent.
Yeah, there it is.
He lost big talent. And you have to come in and you have to really establish.
There was no quarterback there. Will Grier goes to the NFL. You lose half the defense to the National Football League. We can talk all day on how maybe they underachieved in terms of wins and losses the last 2 years with all that talent, but that's not Neal Brown's fault.
Right. And that's why I said I think we should extend a little grace. And even going into next year, Mountaineer fans, I know we love winning. They're like Pittsburgh Steelers. They expect to win, and they want to win. It's a high priority. But when you have a quality coach in there who I think he's been proven at Troy, I think that you have faith that that he's going to turn it around. You know that he's going to get the proper players in place. You have to let him get his guys in there, his recruiting classes in there.
Right.
It might be rough next year, but you got to know that he's building something. If we just got a little bit of patience with him and understanding, the conference that he's playing in, the talent that he's lost, and these aren't justifications of him not winning games, but just give him a little grace, just give him a little grace.
Yeah, I know. It's easier said than done. You should have seen I opened up last season basically saying this year is not going to – don't worry about it, just forget it. People didn't like that too much. But in reality, that's pretty much the situation. And I will say one thing about Neal Brown, at least for me, he says all the right things. Eventually it has to translate onto the field. But even that press conference that he gave at the end of last season when they missed the bowl game, and he basically guaranteed he was going to turn things around, guaranteed. It sounded like he was pissed off and was guaranteeing success. He went as far as – I was waiting for him to guarantee a national championship. He was guaranteeing everything out there. So he has a lot that he's been guaranteeing. So eventually they're going to need him to come up with what his guarantees are, but you got to give him time. Yeah.
And this is what I would challenge the West Virginia faithful with. When we go back and look at some of those games? Was it his decisions that made us lose those games? Or were we just playing against more quality opponents at the time? You know, I mean, every coach is going to have some suspect calls every now and then, but are they the calls that are costing you wins and losses? Or are we just playing against teams who have their situations in order right now, and he's trying to get his situation in order? So if we give him an opportunity, you know, hopefully next year they do qualify for a bowl game. And I think that will be progress. And I know that there's all the guarantees that he had and the expectations that we have as fans, but if we make it to a bowl game next year, we win a bowl game, we build on top of that. We build on, you know, going to the bowl game. We build on having a winning season. He gets another class of recruits in there, and we see how he starts to fit the puzzle in there. Then we start with our judgment hammer, and we can put the gavel down and say, okay, you didn't get it done if you don't win enough games.
Yeah, and I think they're going to give him time because who I know down there, they like him there. It seems like there's nobody who doesn't like Neal Brown so far, really, and he likes being there. So I think that's a big thing, especially for a program like West Virginia. They don't want to go through any more turnover. He likes being there. He fits in kind of with the community, and he's not one at a major level coming from Troy and having his only success there, but having a young guy who's up and coming and wants to be somewhere isn't a bad thing. So we'll see what happens on the field. It's really going to all be about what he does recruiting-wise this offseason, next offseason, and this one's a little bit odd, obviously. Next offseason, the year after, and eventually getting a quarterback in there, and to see if WVU can ever get a quarterback like they had with Pat White, like they've had in the past with a quarterback who's actually someone they recruit and can be there for more than 1 year, a 2 or 3 year product to actually be their guy. The only negative of bringing in the Will Greers of the world is, you know, it's a 2-year max, probably only 1 year because they're going to grad school just to get to the NFL. And then he didn't even end up playing in the bowl games that they would get into because his mind was just on the draft. And I'm not hating him for that, but that you need a program like WVU needs somebody who's actually going to be there for a while, ideally. So we'll see if he can recruit that.
That's what my big thing is. I want to see how he recruits and what top guys that he can bring in to the program. If you can get one of those elite quarterbacks, or if you can go down to, say, Florida, like a Doc Holliday used to do, and do recruiting down there and bring guys who have speed and fit the –
That's why a lot of WVU fans wanted Doc Holliday for a while, by the way.
I mean, I still don't know to this day how Doc was going down there and getting those recruits in. But all of the Florida guys, they loved him. And they were, you know, passing up these Florida schools to come up the mountains of West Virginia and play for – you know, Don Nehlen and Doc Holliday. So I think it's going to be – I think the judgment will come on his recruiting. And, you know, even me being a high school coach up here and seeing some of the talent in the area, and they're not going to Pitt, like, is he going to, you know, stick his foot here and try to bring some, you know, talent down to West Virginia? But I think that's what he's going to be ultimately judged on, and that's what's ultimately going to determine his wins and losses, because you have to get quality recruits to come into your program and turn into stars. And they have the potential to turn into stars at West Virginia, just like Kenny Robinson did in the short 2 years that he was there.
Yeah, and the past success and the past NFL players and the past players that got to the draft, even if it's not under Neal Brown, is going to make WVU an attractive place still. And you're going to have a situation where, you know, kids a lot of the time either fall in love with a program or fall in love with a coach. Right. And I think there's tons of reasons why to fall in love with the program. Maybe we're biased there. But in terms of the coach, there also seems to be reasons to fall in love with the coach. And unlike other programs where you never really know, maybe the bigger programs, they could be leaving, it seems like he's going to be there a while. So if your kid likes him and likes the program, then there's reason to be able to feel like you're going to play under him for several years and he's going to hang around. Now, again, go ahead.
One quick thing. I definitely think he'll be there for the long haul. The one thing I will say is that he has extended an olive branch to some of the people in the program about keeping the older alumni around.
Yeah.
Because we're having some issues over the past few years where, you know, a lot of guys didn't feel like we were really welcome or a part of that tradition and history of the program. So there was a little disconnect there under the last regime, and he has extended that olive branch. So we'll see what happens over
to you personally. Have you got that email, or did he send something to you?
Well, from the office, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And from,
Yeah.
you know, programs that we have out there that really extended some invitations to come down to participate in some things and, you know, to really be involved. And that's big with a lot of guys who have graduated from WVU. We got a chat group together, and we're like, you know, we want to be involved. We want to be able to pass down that history and tradition of who we were when we were at school, and we take pride in it. And, you know, I'm up here in Pittsburgh, and I got to deal with, you know, I got to deal with the Pitt fans all the time. And you know, how could you be a Mountaineer up in Pitt? And it's a shame that, you know, I have almost a better rapport with the University of Pittsburgh than I did with West Virginia University. Now, mind you, I was next door to the Pitt Panthers when I played for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right. Yeah.
I was able to, you know, develop relationships with coaches and a lot of the players there, and actually get to see them practice and work out with some of them kids. But I said, I want to be able to do this with my alma mater. I want to be able to drive down 79, participate in all that.
It's not that far. It's just a straight trip down there. I mean, it's not that far, yeah.
There's a lot of guys who want to be involved with the program. And I think if we can establish that strong relationship, have a great rapport with him, that only enhances his ability to bring quality recruits into the program. So that olive branch has been extended, and we'll see how that relationship develops.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because there's one person that I think that was major for, and that got some national attention, Pat McAfee, who after he missed those kicks in the 07 game, and he had a great NFL career, and now he's a member of the media as well, he said he hadn't felt welcome even since those kicks were missed altogether, and that would be before Holgorsen. So Neal Brown made a point that once he said that on his show publicly, Neal Brown reached out to him and said, hey, no, come on board. I mean, he's the leading scorer in the program history. It's insane that he hasn't been down there in 15 years. His family still is in Pittsburgh. It's not like he doesn't come up here, played the Steelers. On bye weeks, he never went down there because he claimed he didn't feel like he was invited. So that's unfortunate to hear, especially as somebody who was a college student during that time, that you're saying you didn't feel invited. I mean, I was there less than a decade ago. So I definitely hope you guys do take him up on those invitations, and you guys do all get down there, because I think that would also help recruiting to show that this is an upstart program. It's been around for a while. It's actually top 10 in wins in college football history. So there's reason to go there outside of what's going on right now, even to continue the history of the program. So that's great to hear. It's unfortunate. I mean, is that – I guess I got to ask this, being a journalist, but why did you not feel welcome? What was, I mean, anything, and was it in terms of just the coaching staff or you didn't feel like you got invitations? Were there anything saying you're not welcome? Like, why is that such a popular notion that I hear from so many former WVU players that they didn't feel welcome?
I mean, not so much that there wasn't an invitation, although, you know, when I'm with a lot of my other colleagues around and they're saying, hey, I got a letter from, you know, University of Alabama. They're inviting us down to, you know, come to the game. And, you know, it's just like that wasn't so much. It was just one of those where you walk in the room and the music stops and they're like, well, who are you? You know what I mean? And it's like, not to be arrogant, but I got a Hall of Fame plaque sitting on the wall right there, you know, like, why is it so uneasy if I walk into the facility, or if I say I want to come down to a game? It's even hard trying to get alumni tickets to even come into a game. And I'm like, hey, I'll pay for a ticket if I have to, you know. And then it was a thing about us being on the field, and they wanted to put us up in the press box somewhere, and we couldn't. It was just a whole lot of things where it felt like it shouldn't be this hard to come back and support a program that we played at. And, you know, it made some people uncomfortable. We had some dialogue about it as graduates of West Virginia, and people have come through that program. we were just like, do you feel welcome, or do you feel like the music stops when you walk into it? And a lot of people felt like the music stopped when you walked into the stadium, into the facility. If you tried to be involved in the program. Now there was a select few, I guess, who basically had a pass, but
Yeah.
it was just awkward, man. I mean, and I'm glad that Pat addressed that, because he's a stand-up guy. He's all about living life and having fun. And if you don't feel welcome in the atmosphere, man, I mean, it's just an uneasy feeling, and you hate to feel that way about a program that you played for and you gave so much of your life to. I became a young adult at West Virginia University, and coming through the program under Don Nehlen, who I just admire to the fullest. And then, once he was gone, I still felt like the impact that we had should still be enough to walk into an inviting atmosphere. And it just didn't feel like.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, obviously you had enough of an impact to be invited, but I feel like even players who maybe didn't win a Super Bowl or aren't in the Hall of Fame should also still be invited. I mean, you shouldn't have to. Yeah, nobody really should be feeling that way for having played there. And I will say, I know this for a fact. You played under Don Nehlen, but he supports and endorses Neal Brown. He loves Neal Brown. So that also can speak volume to the situation. And obviously they couldn't know each other that long. It's only been a year there. They didn't really know each other before. So for him to be singing Neal Brown's praises, that's a big deal. To transition, though, because you're not only at a WVU alum, and we're talking here with Mike Logan, former Pittsburgh Steeler, as well as former Mountaineer, former Super Bowl champion as well. And you got the ring somewhere in the house there?
You know what? I do. Like the last. You
don't got to show it. You got it. You got it with you. Okay.
What's funny though is the last time I seen it, my son had it somewhere.
Okay.
He's 3, so it can be anywhere right now. And my wife always gets on me. She's like, "You're so careless with that thing," and I'm not careless with it. It's just that I had chased it for so long, and I had visioned myself winning a Super Bowl with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the age of 6 on a Coben and Whitaker projects. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I have it out because it's a reality of a dream that came true, and I still can't believe it. So I have it out frequently because I'm like, I still can't believe this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we'll put it up, and they put it on the shelf and keep it in the box. And, I like to showcase it, man. I like people to see it. I like them to be in the moment with it, see the reality in it. So it's here. And I have a mini Lombardi trophy that's downstairs in my office, too. Oh, believe me, I had a nice setup. I was going to have a nice background and have all the helmets, all the jerseys and everything hanging up. And my kids were like, "Nah, you don't run this. Go upstairs."
Yeah, I hear that. Well, we'll do this again, and we can get the setup sometime as well. But yeah, that's awesome. And whenever you go back down to Morgantown, you should bring that ring with you too to show those kids what they can believe in and dreams that they can achieve as well. But we got some questions, and one was your favorite memory as a Mountaineer and favorite memory as a Steeler. I think the Steeler one's probably clear. You'd probably just answered it. Winning a Super Bowl as a Pittsburgh Steeler, that's probably it, right?
I mean, that was the definite, in the moment. It wasn't just winning the Super Bowl. It was what occurred after the Super Bowl. My mother, who was she's since passed away. She passed away in 2008, but just the moment I got to share with her, I actually got hurt in the Super Bowl and blew my knee out. And after the game, they're like, "You're going to have to get surgery," and I'm like, whatever. I'm going to look for my mother in the stands who had bursitis in her hip, and she walked all the way around that stadium because she said, and I'm like, "Mom, you can stay home." She's like, "I'm going to see my baby playing his dream game." And after the Super Bowl, I went over there and I said, "Jump over the wall." She was sitting in the stand. "Jump over the wall." She jumped over the wall, man. I caught her, and we just walked around the field and had a conversation about my dream coming to fruition. So that was the most special moment for me. And then I'll say just running out the tunnel for the first time, being announced as a Pittsburgh Steeler was special.
What about WVU?
WVU, man, there's so many memories and so many that was the best time of my life playing.
Yeah,
football.
me too. Yeah,
I mean, it was the best time of my life, and I can't pinpoint like a particular game or a play. There were some outstanding plays that I was involved in, and some outstanding teams that I was involved in, but the relationships that developed and came from being roommates with guys like Canute Curtis, who's one of my best friends, struggling during the summertime, staying down there, taking summer classes and scrounging up change to eat and things like that. Those stick with me, man. I mean, it's when I reflect back on those type of things, that's what made WVU so special to me. I mean, of course you can go to, beating Miami, going undefeated in the 1993 team. That was outstanding. That Boston College game was something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. I got to pick on the last play of the game to seal the deal. So those are plays that I'll always cherish and I'll always remember. But my best moments and memories is just the fellowship that I had with my teammates, specifically Canute Curtis, Elijah Longino, Charles Emmanuel, Aaron Beasley. When they called us the Four Amigos, when me, Aaron Beasley, corners from Pennsylvania, met up with Charles Emmanuel and Van Washington, two safeties from Florida. I remember Tim Brown, Rich Brown, a couple of the older veteran guys looking at us and saying, those guys are going to be something special. And when you get accreditation from guys like that, you remember it. And I remember all of us, finishing up at West Virginia and saying, hey, we've done something pretty special. So those are the things and, my favorite memories and moments that I had at West Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, it's time in my life as well. What I do want to get your thoughts on is what's kind of going on right now in the world, and we touched on that going into the program here, but and how that's relating to the NFL and the NFL draft. The NFL, unlike the other leagues, and they weren't in season, but I've said this on my shows, the NFL is determined, man, to not let any pandemic stop them. I mean, it is business as usual for the NFL. Players are signing, players are getting released, players are tweeting about money that's owed to them. They're trying to get ready for the draft. They're still talking to prospects. They can't actually meet face to face right now, but they're keeping it moving. I mean, it is not. They are pumping the brakes, and there's not really any time for any Zoom chats between any players talking, having wine and talking about the good old days. It is right now business as usual for the National Football League. And that plays into the upcoming NFL draft, which is going to be a virtual experience. So number one, I do want to ask you, as somebody who dealt with coming out of college and eventually landing in the NFL, you can't do anything about it, but how much would that suck, I guess? To lose being able to have the experience of being on the stage, having your family there, you're doing a virtual draft. And then I am going to, segue into the Steelers general manager and his recent thoughts and what he thinks should be occurring with this draft and if there's going to be any issues. But just, what are your thoughts? How much would that take away from that experience? Do you feel bad for these kids?
Yeah, I do. But first of all, you're talking about business as usual with the NFL, and I'll take that line from concussion when you say this is a company who basically owns a day of the week.
Yeah.
They definitely have kept things moving. I talked about Kenny Robinson earlier, and I spoke with him just last week talking about his preparation for the NFL draft. And this is such unprecedented circumstances around it. He's like, well, what did you do? And, as I'm explaining to him, what went on with me, like even as far as how I chose an agent and what teams I talked to, how I interviewed with them, what trips I went on to interview with different teams. All of that preparation he can't do right now.
He can't do none of that. Yeah, like I even had somebody ask, a colleague, Aaron Martin with PXI asked, what would you do if you didn't have OTAs, if you didn't have if you couldn't, show off what you run and what your 40 time is. And a lot of, especially from an athletic position, like a corner, like a defensive back, a safety, linebacker, receiver, running back, you need to kind of show off what your attributes are, and you just can't.
You have to. And that's what I was, one of the things that I spoke with him about. I said, after the draft, if you get drafted by a team, you have to come in, if y'all have a rookie camp, so you have to be prepared for that. So you have to go out and continue to do the work that's necessary to be in not only tip-top shape, but football shape. So you can go out and train and lift weights and do all those things. But if you're not doing football movements and preparing your mind as far as, studying and those type of things, then you're going to be lost in translation when it comes to wherever you go. But I do feel bad for the guys who would have got invited to the stage, at the draft, being able to take a picture with the commissioner up there once your name is called, to be gathered, with family and friends, because obviously you're not going to be able to throw like a draft party, even virtual.
Yeah.
Where you're not supposed to, but
that'll be frowned upon because if that one puts that on camera, that wouldn't be good. No.
So, and then that's going to come with a whole, parade of stuff from some social media. So you're basically going to have to, put your head down and just hope for the best. And I know that sounds like weird, but in all reality, you don't know what's going to happen, because you don't know what these executives and scouts are talking about right now. If this would have happened when I was coming out, I may not have gotten drafted, or I probably wouldn't have gotten drafted in the second round, because in 1996, 97, when I got drafted, I actually pulled a hamstring in a bowl game and wasn't able to run at the combines. So everything was predicated on my personal workout at West Virginia, which was Knute Curtis's workout, but I went in and just showed out at that pro day. I had my best workouts and best field performances that I had prior to getting drafted. Yeah. So I wouldn't have been able to have a pro day. And coming off of pulling my hamstring in a bowl game and not being able to work out and not, sit in front of coaches, not be able to work out at the combine, who knows what would have happened. So I'm sitting here and I'm trying to tell him how to prepare, and I'm like, wow, this is weird, man. It's weird not being able to really be in grind mode, because there's so much idle time now that you can kind of lose focus. Of course you can train, you can do all those things, but you can kind of lose focus. It's something different when you're sitting in front of a NFL exec or a coach who's asking you some real questions that may determine if they draft you, right? Instead of sitting on the phone and maybe trying to talk to an agent and seeing what their feelings are and how things are going. So I just think this is going to be
everybody looks good in an Instagram video. Everybody's Instagram workout, everyone's looking amazing. It's a bunch of Hall of Famers out there, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen when you get to the pro day or when you get to rookie minicamp. Or
I could work some things on this phone and I could still go out there and show you look good. But it's going to be very, very interesting, but I do feel bad that those guys won't get an opportunity to really, experience the draft.
Yeah. Now, Kevin Colbert made some interesting comments, and we also heard John Harbaugh make comments on he's concerned that, like anyone who's done any fantasy drafts, that someone's going to get booted out of there, the connection's going to fail, something's going to happen. So he's already concerned. It's basically he's already throwing out the excuses before we even get ready. But Kevin Colbert actually dropped some bombs, claiming that he believes teams should actually have extra rounds. There should be 3 more rounds as almost some favor for this happening. He's actually against doing this virtual draft. Now, I don't know what else you could do, because they can't push the draft back any further. If you don't do the draft, then how are you going to get into the NFL unless they're just all free agents? But that would just be crazy. So he's upset about this. But what are your thoughts on? Do you feel the team should be offered more rounds as some compensation for this? And is there any concern that there's going to be some issues with this draft?
I don't see anything wrong with throwing a few more rounds in there. The draft used to be 20 rounds. it would give them a better opportunity to seek talent that they know that they want on their team instead of having to fight or try to sign them as an undrafted free agent afterwards. I don't see any harm with that. I mean, I think the rounds were cut anyway just to really almost save time. I mean, we have nothing but time on our hands right now. So let them guys do what they do, their due diligence on, accumulating players that they want. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that's going to happen, but it was interesting that he was so outspoken with almost being against this setup, and I'm sure a lot of it's just the uncharted territory, but there's nothing else that can be done. What I do want to ask you here before, we close up shop, and hopefully we can do these again in the future here, is how important is it for a player, and you did change teams in your career, going to a new team, or even a player getting drafted, obviously then would be on a new team. Now, obviously, Tom Brady, when he goes to the Buccaneers from the Patriots, the Bucs are going to reroute the whole thing for him. So he's not going to have to really stress too much. But if you're a regular player, and there's been a lot of moves of players changing teams and potentially going into new systems, or even players entering from college to the draft, how much could it affect them if there is not the traditional mini camp or training camp? I mean, there were conversation with the new CBA of they're adding another week to the NFL season now. There's more games, but they wanted to cut down preseason games. And I've always been, I guess, the heel in the media with this opinion that, and I didn't play obviously, but you can't really cut down that many preseason games, maybe one at the most. But if you whittle down the preseason games, people hate preseason. That's going to hurt teams trying to, put their roster together. It's going to hurt the 55th man on the roster. It's going to make it very, very difficult to actually build your team. You need those preseason games. They're not for Ben Roethlisberger. They're for the rest of the team, really. But if not only – they're probably going to be preseason games by the time – I'm hoping this is over by that point. But if there's not training camp, if I can't get down there in St. Vincent and have to get down in the 100-degree weather and run all over that campus looking to interview you guys, how much is that going to impact teams? And can you actually expect these teams to play football and play NFL football with this new schedule with almost no training camp? Because if this COVID-19 trickles down into June, July, and August, the NFL does not want to delay the season. Are they almost going to – would you recommend they're almost basically forced to if they don't do training camp? Do you have to have some training camp?
You have to have some training camp. You have to. I mean, for me, just the transition going from the college game to the pro game was difficult. And I know there's some people that seamlessly seem like they make that transition.
Right.
But they get over their triumphs in mini camps. They get over that rookie camp is outstanding to be out there the first time with guys who haven't experienced that. It settles you a little bit. I had the good fortune of being able to go to Jacksonville where Aaron Beasley was drafted the year before, and he was able to help me with that transition. He had went through it, so he was able to help me through that transition. But mini camp, rookie camp, training camp was so instrumental.
Yeah, do you even need rookie camp? Because they're going to, I'd imagine, do some type of training camp. But do you think rookie camp's even important, rookie mini camp?
I think rookie camp is extremely important because, like I said, just the rookies down there. Everybody who is participating, it's their first time, experiencing this level of competition, this level of, just information coming at you. So I think it's vital. And to go into a season without a full training camp, a full preseason, I think it's going to take some time for a quality product to be out on the field. I mean, you can go out there and do it, but then I think a lot of injuries happen when you don't have a long training camp. You even see now how tackling, just fundamental tackling, I think has suffered because of you don't really get the hit in training camp. When I watch a game, I watch form tackling. I watch it from a different lens of interpretation, maybe the average fan. I'm looking at certain things, and I'm like, that comes in practice when you're going full speed and you're able to just really exert your energy in one way and be able to figure some things out. So I really hope that they get a full training camp. that they get full mini camps and everything is able to go, as it's been. If it doesn't, I don't think that we'll see a quality product out on the field if the NFL gets started and doesn't have a training camp.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that as somebody who's went through it, because I don't think people really understand how much that is vital, even preseason games, and how important they are and how teams do utilize them, as annoying as they are.
Yeah, and I know people are, since they're adding a week to the season, if they take off a preseason game, I'm not mad at that. You're still going to get, if you're a player who that is going to hurt, like you said, it's going to hurt the guys who are bubble players. It's going to hurt guys who, maybe went to a free agents who went to a new team, things of that nature. But, they'll be able to get a good evaluation of talent if they have mini camps and full training camps. So I'm not mad about maybe cutting one preseason game, but I feel like they need a full training camp to be able to go out there and really, evaluate their team. And even, like you said, you gave the example of Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay players who are there are going to have to adjust if they're going to change the whole system for even Tom Brady. So those players who have been doing something one way are going to have to adjust and say, okay, now we're going to be doing it this way. It's a transition that's going to take some time.
Yeah, and there's pressure on them because basically anyone Brady has ever thrown the football to has had success. So if he goes to Tampa and all of a sudden you're not getting it done and he's throwing you the same ball, the eyes are going to be on what's wrong with you. So, yeah, that's definitely be interesting. And I will say I saw it right in front of my eyes when you talk about the importance of rookie minicamp and how it's different and even how that can lead to NFL success for young players. Devin Bush, who the Steelers traded up for, he was a highly touted backer. I didn't think they were actually going to be able to do that because that was uncharacteristic of the Steeler way to be trading up and giving up a first pick, and Minka certainly worked out with that trade. But when I saw Devin Bush in rookie minicamp, he was like Ray Lewis out there. He's calling plays. He already knew all the plays. He came off like he was a leader of the team, and he had only been there for 20 minutes. So right there, I was sold on that draft pick just from seeing him rookie minicamp. And then you go to training camp, and you see him on backs on backers. And again, he was wowing everybody on what he was doing. And he had but you could still see, and that proves your point, there was the first few weeks of the season where he still had a slow progression. People were criticizing him, and it took him a while to really get going. So imagine a guy that everybody thought so much of that had such a great rookie camp, had such a great training camp, and still had sluggish start and then had success. If you don't have all of that, or at least not all that full, imagine how difficult that would be.
I'll give you another great example of that. Number 43, Hall of Famer, safety Troy Polamalu, who had a somewhat of a holdout and missed a little bit of training camp, meetings and such. And I think he came in on actually like the first or second day of training camp, but just some of those meetings and being around different players. And Troy has one of the highest football IQs that I've ever seen in my life. But for him to come in, he struggled a little bit in that rookie season. Benefit to me because I was still able to start the season starter and being in the system, but it just takes you a minute to get acclimated to just a different environment, of a different.
I mean, there's more games. I mean, your body just is being taxed on. There's more games than a college football season, and that's one thing that I nobody's really talked about, and it's not as important, I guess, because it's just a ceremony. I don't know if you're going to get down there. I'm going to try to if they have it, but I'm hoping that the pandemic doesn't disrupt having the Hall of Fame ceremony in Canton, because that's a Steeler parade. That's Coward. That's Polamalu. I mean, I don't know if you're planning on going. I was gonna definitely try to go down there to cover it. That would be really unfortunate if they can't have that, or trying to do that virtually, just not going to get it done. So
I was just thinking about that, man. I was like, Bill Cowher, Donnie Shell, Troy Polamalu.
Yeah,
those were the three people that I mean, I had a great relationship with Coach Cowher and knowing him before I even came home. Got to, play beside Troy and ultimately relinquish my position to him. And then Donnie Shell, the person, the Pittsburgh Steeler that I idolized and wore his number. I mean, I have to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was praying the other night and actually sent Donnie a message on Twitter just saying he picked his daughter to be his presenter, and I was saying congratulations, how honored I was and how much I respected him. So, I have to be there. So, listen, everybody stay home so I can to go and see the Hall of Fame induction for 3 of my favorite Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, stay at home now will help us not to stay at home as long, so we can at least have that happen. So yeah, that's the point of it. But yeah, that's something that I really hope isn't affected, because that was a long wait for Cowher too. It's not. I mean, Polamalu's obviously going right in, but these guys had to wait. And it's not too bad when you relinquish your position to a young guy, and he became potentially the best ever at it. So in Polamalu, so that's nice as well. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting. Now, what I do want to ask you as we round things out, we mentioned there's a new CBA. We mentioned there's now going to be more games, and I've touched on the kind of hypocrisy of the NFL talking about player safety and then adding more games, and how that's really about money, and they know there's going to be more people in the stands, and that's going to be more money for them. However, this CBA, more than any I can remember in really any league, has been odd in a sense that the players who are currently playing have been very outspoken and against each other. There have been teammates, there have been friends who are blasting Twitter every day. They're arguing back and forth, and they are not agreeing at all. They came down with one of the most contested CBA results in terms of voting ever. Now, it did get passed. They are going to have the extra game, the extra week. You will see the players get about a percentage and a half more on the divide, even though it's still not 50-50 somehow. There's a lot of people who have problems with it. Most of the more veteran players seemingly had problems with it, whereas the younger players, I guess maybe the later guys on the roster, just wanted more of their piece of the pie. However, with that divide, and if you want to give your take on it, for sure, go ahead. But what I really want to get out of this is, with that divide and it being so unique, do you feel like in the locker room or in training camp or any of these times, is that going to bleed in where you're going to have one player, there's always tension and always fights, but are they going to start saying, hey, man, where did you vote? Like you do with political elections. Did you vote against my wallet? Because players are going to be big on their money now, especially. And I never begrudge any player for trying to get the most money he can. I even said that about Le'Veon Bell a couple of years ago when he was going through a vote out. But that's now going to bleed into these players being so divided. And look at the numbers. Clearly, some of your teammates voted against this deal. Some of them voted for the deal. So is that going to cause extra tension that could actually be a problem?
Well, I'll say this. It's going to come down to each individual locker room. What leaders you have on that team to say, okay, listen, we have differences off the field, but our agenda right now is to produce on the field. There's a time and a place to handle this, and I ain't gonna lie. I mean, I sat in some rooms with some of the older players, and we didn't even have a vote, but we were just talking about how we felt about things, and we were trying to have meetings with younger players.
So did you feel peer pressured ever? Like, say when you were a younger player, did you ever feel any veterans telling you, hey, man, this is what we need to do, just get with it, toe the company line?
I did, but see, I was so naive to it, and that's the thing. Fortunately, my second or third year in the league, there was a guy who played in front of me. His name was Chris Hudson, and he was able to pull me to the side and say, listen, I know you don't care about this right now, but in the long run, this is all that's going to matter. He's like, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, nobody plays forever.
He said, but when your career is over, and he was like, the average career is 3 years, He was like, if you're lucky to play at that. And I was thinking, like, whatever. I was blessed and fortunate enough to play over a decade, but that's not normal. He finally made me realize you need to be paying attention to this stuff. There's some guys who just don't care. They're thinking about the immediate dollar right now. But there's those guys who are in their 5th, 6th, 7th year who are like, this is instrumental in our livelihood for the rest of our lives. And it's going to matter. So you need to make it matter. And those are the tough conversations that they're going to have, what they were having in those locker rooms. And I'm just not – with everything and the way this CBA went down, there were some reports that something got changed after the vote. And there's a whole lot going on. And actually, this is how much I wanted to honor this interview with you. I had a former players NFL PA chapter Zoom meeting scheduled for the same time, and I didn't know. but we actually have another one on
Okay,
Tuesday.
well, I definitely appreciate it. We could have moved it around, but I appreciate it.
No, but we've been trying to do this for a while. But we're having another meeting on Tuesday to go over some of the changes in the new CBA and how it's going to affect certain guys who are now getting benefits from it who previously didn't get benefits from it. But there's been a lot of turmoil. I'll just say it's been a lot of turmoil about this CBA, but I don't think it's deep enough that it will ruin guys' seasons who are actively playing now.
And I will say for the Steelers, and you know this, Mike Tomlin is a coach that he's been criticized for sometimes not getting enough of a lid on the locker room with the whole Antonio Brown mess and those different dramas. But especially going to last year and after the national anthem and how that potentially divided the team, he's been able to – it appears to me, at least, as someone who covers the team that's not inside the locker room, though, that he's actually worked on that. And it seems that from last year, that team was really together. I think people forget that if they had the new schedule now, Mike Tomlin would never have missed a postseason. He would have been in the playoffs the last 2 years, even with all the AB drama and then what happened last year. They had backup quarterbacks, and they still only missed by a game. So he did actually have that team galvanized together, even if he maybe didn't have as much in the past. So I'm imagining have a lid on things, and that probably will be his first meeting with the team in training camp if they do have it. Hey, we're worrying about football now. We can't change the vote. Not everyone's going to agree all the time.
I think guys on that team now, this current team, will get a handle on that. And I was able to spend a little bit of time just through a meeting with Mr. Hayward, and he's
very vocal.
You know what I mean? He's a no-nonsense guy. He wants the team to be unified on a media front, regardless of what goes on behind closed doors. I think Mr. Pouncey sometimes speaks out, and we know how he felt about the CBA and we're voting. But again, I think that'll be addressed before, they put the pads on and stuff starts going live, and then they can voice their opinions afterwards. I think it'll be handled that way. I don't think it'll be a problem for the Pittsburgh Steelers going forward in this season, but there's a lot of ill-will feelings about this new CBA and it getting signed. So it'll cause some frustration, but I don't think it'll affect anybody's season ultimately.
Do you have, and you don't have to mention who, but did you have any current players reaching out to you on the down low there to ask what your opinions are and maybe what they should do in terms of vote or what the real situation could be? Do you ever
No. Well, put it this way, man. I mean,
I wasn't going to ask you who it is, but
well, no, we actually tried. We want to have a rapport with the current players because we're the experience now. We're telling them what's to come. But it's a little odd because all of these young players and the money that they're making now. I mean, I got drafted over 20 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's like they're thinking like, what do you want from me? You know what I mean? It's almost like, what do you want from me coming back and reaching it? You did your time. Like, what do you want from me? I can't do nothing for you. And I'm like, listen, this is for you. This is for you because you're going to beat me at one point, at some point. Yeah. And it's kind of hard to get an established rapport with the young guys right now who are making the money and they're just living their life. It's hard to tap into that. So they do have a former players conference where we have a couple of days where the current active players are at a conference, and we try to sit down and really give them information that we have and how it can affect them going forward. But as you can see, after signing this CBA, it didn't really get through to a lot of guys.
It didn't get through in a lot of other respects. I've seen those videos where Herm Edwards tells you not to press send, and then we've experienced Antonio Brown the past year and a half. So there's been a lot of pressing send, unfortunately.
It's been tough, man. But you really want these guys to understand how precious life is after football and how precious it is while you're playing the game. I've learned so much over the past just a couple of years of being more actively involved in our chapter, our Pittsburgh chapter of the Former Players Association, and understanding the benefits that, we negotiated for and how they applied to my life, going through some life changes, some life-changing situations in my life after I retired that I never thought I would be in, because nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. And even now, going through this pandemic and looking at my 401k now, I did that on an accident and just was like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, so those are
you hear financial advisors tell you not to care because it's just the profit that you've been losing, but it's like, nah, I see negative $6,000. That's not good. Like, I'm not excited.
When
or whatever.
Yeah, I was like, it's deep. So
yeah,
I hope that, and this is something that a lot of guys, older guys, have been working on. Not that we have to do it, but we feel like we owe the players of this wonderful game the knowledge that we have accrued during our playing days and after our playing days. And we have to give that back to them so that they understand that the lights are going to go out. I don't care if you're a Hall of Fame player, you could be an all-pro, your body's going to break down, your mind is going to break down, and I don't care how much money you got. And you have to learn some of these things and how to take advantage of what we fought for to make sure that you're taken care of afterwards. Because when I retired after playing over a decade, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't set up for the rest of my life. I'm thinking that I got a nice portfolio. I did decent with my last 2 contracts, and I felt good. And then life hit. I had 3 life-changing events happen to me in a year and a half, and it drastically, physically, emotionally, financially, psychologically, took me from a good place to a low-level place. And I didn't know where to look for support. I didn't know where to look for as far as resources. And you need to understand all that while you're playing. And I get it. You're there to play football, to learn and do all these things, but you have to look forward to your future and life after football because it's such a short period of your life.
Yeah, and Steeler fans know that better than anyone because Steeler fans experienced seeing what happened to Ryan Shazier a few years ago and what's going on with him, and they're keeping him around, which is mostly for his health care that not everybody realizes. But they're not even going to do that forever. They're not going to keep him on for 20 years just to give him some health care. And he's come a long way in terms of his rehabilitation, but he's still – I wouldn't predict ever getting back on the football field again. And he probably thought he was going to have a long career, maybe even a Hall of Fame career from where he was. And that did not end up being something that could materialize. So he didn't get to hit that big money deal. It's very unfortunate, but that's a reality that could very well happen to you. And even losing favor and losing your position in terms of the league. Juju, for example, rookie year over 900 yards, people comparing that year to Randy Moss's rookie year. Second year, his numbers were better than AB after AB leaves. And then all of a sudden, AB is gone. You're the number one guy. You're getting the double teams. Your quarterback gets hurt, and your numbers aren't there. You're dropping balls. You're losing games because you fumble it away. Fans aren't as excited when you're dancing in the middle of the 4-pit tunnel anymore. And now if he doesn't turn it on this next year, I've said he has probably more pressure on him than any other NFL player. He's not going to get a big deal. They're going to tell me, what have you done for me lately, even though your rookie year was so great. So things can really turn real fast in the
NFL. And that's what, I try to educate fans on the game now and different aspects of the game, because ultimately, even though I'm a former player, I'm a fan now, what I mean? And I try to give them inside perspectives on how things change in an instant so they can see it from that. They don't want to hear that either. They're like,
no,
that's true. But, the current players have to pay attention to that. I'm still going through this CBA, looking at different things and how it affects the older players, how it affects the long-term health and disability benefits that players get from there. And people are upset, man. I mean, we have a former players app that we have, and it's just all former players can join, and we can kind of put our opinions on there. It's almost like a Twitter or a
but away
Facebook
from the fans. That's actually not bad. I would recommend any player that wants to argue, go there instead of Twitter.
Please come in there, because we got a great dialogue with respect. Some a little more aggressive than others, but we have people who can answer questions. Some people who give their opinions about why this may have been good, why this was bad, why we sacrificed this. It's a great media outlet for us to express ourselves, and it's just in the confines of former players in the league. But it's hard to look at that now, and then we're tied in for over a decade with the CBA, so we have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing to me. I got to be honest. There's nothing in this world today with as quick as everything moves, technology and everything, that I maybe if I get married, but do I want to be committing to I don't want to say it too loud because she's upstairs, but I was about to say there's nothing I want to commit to for 10 years. I mean, to be locked down for 10 years to anything is catastrophic with TV deals. I mean, within the next decade, you're going to see NFL games probably on YouTube TV, probably not on any of these networks. Those deals are going to come up. Everything's going to be crazy, and it's all going to affect money, and you're locked in for 10 years. That just seems like a real long period of time.
I never thought that it would be a 10-year deal. I thought, even half of that. I was like, I just didn't think it would be a 10-year deal. And, a lot of people, when that was coming up, was like, that's too long. We need to make sure that we get shorter deals. But they seemed adamant about having that time. I don't know. There's so many emotions that go through with it now, starting to understand it a little more clear than I did before. And that's what I'm saying. It's so vital for these current players to understand what's going on with the CBA and even the former players, because, again, they will be in our shoes quicker than they think.
Yeah, they will be, and you could be the best in the business right now, and boom, things can definitely change for you. So we'll see. It's always interesting and fun to discuss. I definitely appreciate you coming on and doing this with me for sure. We'll definitely have to do this again. I know you aren't able to watch as much these days because you're busy with your own career and then your kids and your family and all of that. Do you have any takes on what the Steelers should, at least position-wise, what they should do in the draft? Some say running back, some say receiver.
Yeah, well, let me say this first. I like what they did with the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade.
Okay.
And giving up the first round pick. I think he's a first round talent.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck on this. I feel like at some point we're going to have to take a quality quarterback.
Yeah, Ben's not going to – I mean, I would imagine Ben doesn't want to go out the way the last year happened.
Right.
But he's not going to play more than 1 or 2 years. There's no –
I get it. And that's what so if they're heart set on their QB position now, which I don't think they are, if you see a guy that's worth a second-round talent, I think you take him now.
Yeah.
I think you take them now. Especially, I don't see the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know there's been talk of like people were saying Jameis Winston would be a nice pick here. That's just not their MO of doing things. I don't know. If I had a quality guy, which I feel like there'll be a quality guy, a quarterback in the second round of this draft, I would take him now.
Yeah, and that's interesting because that's certainly a smart thing they're going to eventually have to do. However, you're going to have, who you mentioned earlier, Cam Hayward, who's an 11-year veteran that came to the team just after the last Super Bowl championship. He's looking for the ring still, and he's probably going to tell you, hey, Mike, I'm trying to win a championship right now. We got James Conner getting hurt all the time. He can't play a full season. Juju has got hurt. We don't really have a number one wide receiver. James Washington's dropping every other ball. He does step up sometimes, but there's also need positions now that they need to fix now if they want to win now. But they potentially would cripple themselves for the future. And we all just saw life without Ben this past season. That's where it is. That was what it was. And I'll send you a video actually of my show where I touched on the Jameis Winston thing. I wish the guy well, but I don't see how a guy that is throwing 30 interceptions last year, turning over 35 times is good for your team when the problem you had with Mason Rudolph and Duck is they turned it over too much. He'd be the same thing.
You know, I hear people talking about that all the time, you know, and I just kind of shake my head and say, okay, you know, I just know that the Pittsburgh Steelers, they need some help offensively. I think they should really address that during the draft. But I had to think about that quarterback position, and that was something that I was just thinking about. Even when I spoke to you, I was like looking at the quarterback position. If there's a gunslinger that's in that second round, and you know, you got Ben, who I don't know. I know he was throwing. I don't know what the severity of his injury was, but if he doesn't come back and be, how old is he now? I mean,
he's 37, I believe, something like that. Yeah, I can't imagine he's playing more than 1 or 2 more years. People who thought he was going to retire after last year, I never believed that because he has an ego too. He didn't want to go out standing on the sideline with a beard looking like a Bionic Lumberjack, but he's not going to play forever either.
Not. And you have to get somebody that you know, if they spend a second-round pick on a quarterback, they're going to try to invest in him and say, hey, you know, this is it. We're going to give you everything that we got. You got Ben there to learn off of for a year or two. This is you. We're
Ben's 38, by the way, too.
38. So
there you go. Yeah.
You know, I think back to when I was 38, I was out the league and feeling, you know, the way I feel. But, you know, I would take a chance this year, you know, and I know there's some need positions right now. We talked about receiver, but, you know, I expect Juju to bounce back and prove if he really is a number one guy. And Washington has to do the same. He has to be a quality number 2 and beat them options. James Conner, is he going to be able to rebound and not get hurt this season? Because if he gets any kind of little hiccup, people give it to him. You know what I mean? They're going to give it to him. But I expect him to try to rise up to the call and do what he can. But if I'm in there, I'm looking at QB.
Yeah, they're going to have those conversations eventually for sure, because the one thing that people don't realize about Ben, or maybe they do, he's 38 years old. He's younger than Brady and Breeze, but his 38 years on his body is probably like he's 50 because we know the motorcycle incident. He's been injured quite a bit. He played a lot of those years very beat up. The offensive line didn't always protect for him like maybe they had over there in New England. So it's not the same. He's not playing till he's 45. Brady might be able to do that, but it's not going to happen for Ben.
No, he would.
There's no way.
I think, and tell you the truth, you know, I think Ben is this is his show and prove year. If he comes out and he has a great year, this might be his last year. If he comes out and plays well and he can say, I finished at the top of my game, he may be done.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very possible. I would not be shocked. In fact, if they get in the playoffs, I would probably imagine this will be his last year. And there's no way he's playing more than 2 years. We'll see. But, he's certainly wrapping it up soon. Well, Mike, go ahead.
Real quick on that, though. If he doesn't play but a year or two, so would you take next – I would rather get a guy in now that can get a year or two experience under his belt, somebody that we scout and we say, okay, he's a quality guy, rather than say, okay, he plays next year and we got to spend a first-round pick and try to plug somebody in there to come in and play QB with no experience, no veteran leadership guy to lead him through. I think this is the year for us to do it.
Well, I'll guarantee you one thing, and nobody wants to hear this. I almost guarantee the first year Ben retires, the next season, not a good year. I don't care what's going on. I don't care who you're drafting. We saw what life without Ben was last 2 years, and maybe now Rudolph and Duck have more legs under them, and they have more experience now. Maybe they can be better for next season, but I don't feel either one of them is the answer. I don't really love anybody coming out in the draft, honestly. I don't know what they're going to do. They're probably going to have a year or two where they're just going to be kind of muddy in the waters. It's not a franchise that's going to sign the next
No.
Tom Brady for a year or two or Brett Favre for a stopgap. They're just going to have to wait it out for a year or two and see if something happens. But it's probably going to be rough. And a lot of those fans out there who don't fully appreciate Ben, they're going to see how wrong they were and how wrong they are whenever Ben is officially gone. So that's going to happen sooner or later.
It's going to be an exciting year for the fans and social media. So I'll be plugged in.
Yeah, it's gonna be an important year. It's gonna be an exciting year, and hopefully it gets to actually be a year, and there actually can be a full season because none of that's guaranteed right now. Mike, I definitely appreciate you taking the time.
Let's do this again.
We definitely got to do this again. Definitely got to do this again. I wouldn't even begin trying to make this a consistent thing that we talked about before. So we'll definitely try to do that, especially with this technology making it kind of easy here. So I definitely appreciate it, and go play with your kids there. That I think I heard them run around behind you. So
they're banging on the door like, Dad, you've been gone too long. Where you at?
Yeah. So you were a great player in the football field, and now you're a great dad. So go ahead and be a great dad.
Seriously, we got time to do this. You let me know when you want to do it again. We'll hop on. We'll chop it up.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Man, we were trying to do that for a while. Mike Logan and I have been going back and forth trying to do that for a while. We actually talked even a consistent thing of him coming down to our old studio, and just hasn't been able to work out. But finally able to get Mike Logan on the airways, former Steeler, former Mountaineer, kind of my wheelhouse through all my trip days, and even now what I'm doing. Not able to do anything with Mike Logan until this point, so definitely happy to speak to him there. And he even broke some news in terms of an app the former players have and how they converse. So that was definitely really cool to hear, at least for me. He seems up for doing more of these, so we're going to try to promise more with Mike Logan, which obviously can be cross-posted on Steelers Now as well as on WV Sports Now. Maybe we'll throw it up there on Pittsburgh Sports Now as well. So with more Mike Logan interviews to come, with more of those talks and shows with Mike Logan to come, as well as everything else we have going on the channel. I said this on Twitter, and I do mean this now. We obviously can't deliver what we normally promise and what many of you may have subscribed for in terms of the player interviews, coach interviews, post-game reactions, all of that. We get it. You're probably not here just to hear my show, and we have all of that usually feed the channel on a daily basis, hourly basis, in addition to these shows. But we're going to try to provide as many of these shows as you can. We're going to really ramp up the energy in terms of getting guests on, especially with the capabilities now of Zoom, even with the stay-at-home order. So we spent a year basically not worrying about guests because of this and not having the games. We're going to give you more guests. We're going to give you more people to hear from, whether they're other credential members of media, colleagues of mine, or their former players like Mike Logan. Going to definitely have him on again, make that a potential consistent thing that you're going to be able to watch and hear on Pittsburgh Sports Live and then consume there on the websites. Want to remind you to make sure you follow our entire family of networks, Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, as well as, of course, Steelers Now, WV Sports Now, that's a part of the network, even Racing Now. Racing Now, actually, they're still churning content, and they're doing a lot of great stuff, including a lot of podcast interviews over there. Not yet a part of PSL, but we might work on that. But still, hit up Racing Now as well over there. You want to find us here at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, as well as Pittsburgh Sports Live on Facebook and all through the social media circuit. And we talk Steelers and WVU. Mike Logan, former Steeler, former Mountaineer. It's going to go on that site. So, of course, at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter and at WV Sports Now on Twitter. And make sure to, as you're, rounding this out, if you like this and you want more of this, which you'll get, as well as what we otherwise have throughout the channel, feel free to browse. It's behind me there. Feel free to browse the mic drop section for more of my shows, no matter what topic we're discussing, no matter what sport we're covering, as well as every single site being sectioned out there on PSL, and even post-game shows whenever they actually are able to happen. We have it all there on the channel on Pittsburgh Sports Live. So follow me at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter if you want. You can find me there, and you can also find Mike Logan. I believe he's at mlogan31. I believe that's what it is, at mlogan31 there on Twitter. And make sure to, this is very, very important, to click on the subscribe button on the button below. It helps us keep these lights on, even if it's a home studio, helps the sponsors, helps us keep paying the bills here and keep this network moving. And it also helps you get an instant notification when these are happening and when they're done. If you don't happen to follow me or don't want to and don't get that promotion there on social media, just literally click subscribe and you'll get a notification right away to your phone or whatever device you're using for YouTube. So once again, we're going to give you more of Mike Logan because that was great. I enjoyed myself. And if nothing else, when I enjoy myself, I like doing it. So even if you don't like it, I at least like doing that and talking with Mike. And that's been a long time coming. So we're going to have a beer as well, in addition to doing more of these shows. He was one of those that just made sense. Former Mountaineer, former Steeler. I'm in Pittsburgh media. I'm a WVU alum. Just had to bring him on shows. He's actually a former Trib Live radio guy as well, even though that was before my time there. But I never could bring him back to the Trib. Never could get him any other network, anywhere else I was hosting shows. Like, I just couldn't have him on. We didn't seem to cross paths, so I'm glad we finally got that done. And again, make sure to click subscribe. It helps you out more than anybody.